Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a mining analyst here at Red Cloud Securities. We welcome Joe Kizis, President, and also on the line is Rob Macdonald, VP Exploration of Equity Metals. They will speak to us about Equity's Silver Queen project in British Columbia, where they have been drilling high-grade silver and gold veins. Gentlemen, you have 15 minutes, and then we'll have a 5-minute Q&A at the end of the session. Attendees, please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A link below. Take it away, Joe.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Thank you for the opportunity. Equity Metals is one of the Mannix Group companies, and we are focusing, as Tim mentioned, on the Silver Queen project in west central British Columbia. We're looking at a high-grade epithermal vein system in an excellent mining district. We trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange Venture Exchange, the OTCQB, and the Frankfurt Exchange. We are the exploration stage project, so I'll be making a number of forward-looking statements as expected. So a little bit about the company. We're primarily a resource base to the shareholders. This is a company that we took over from a struggling group. They had a pretty nice early stage resource, and we took over the company at around 5 or 6 cents. We had a nice run up as our first round of exploration proved to be pretty exciting, and trailed off a little bit when the silver price started having some issues here. So, we're trading now at about 14 cents. That gives us a market cap of about $14 million. And we've just completed the most recent round of drilling. And at this point, once we paid all the bills, we'll still have a cash position of well over 1.5 million, maybe 1.7, 1.8. So we're in pretty good shape. We have some pretty exciting things to talk about. The team has been involved with a number of discoveries. Larry Page is a securities lawyer. He's been involved with a number of successes: Penasquito discovery in Mexico, Hemlo and Eskay Creek in Canada. Rob and I have been involved with the Homestake Ridge discovery, which is sold to Orin Resources, and right now Rob is focusing a lot of his time on the Sierra Las Minetas property, which you may have heard about yesterday. Other talented people, well experienced on our board as well. So let's take a look at why we decided to take over this project. There were a number of projects within the company. The company was struggling, as I mentioned, but they had just completed a resource which we found very attractive. The resource came out just after we took over, but essentially about 440,000 ounces of gold equivalent in both indicated and inferred categories. But really what caught our attention is the very high grade 7.5 and 9.3 grams per ton gold equivalent. So we took a look at the geology and said, well, this looks like an intermediate sulfidation system related to a porphyry district. And in fact, there are a lot of porphyry deposits in the surrounding area. We thought we could add significantly to this resource, and in particular, we thought we could add it at these higher resource grades. So near-term thought was we could take this into the plus 1 million ounce range fairly quickly, and that's what we started to do. We focused on an area called the Camp Vein, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So there were a few other assets in the company, and this is the one that really caught our attention. But there are 2 diamond projects in the Northwest Territories, Lac de Grasse area, both of which have diamond-bearing kimberlites. And we have a majority interest, 57% roughly, in the Monument. We're the operator, WO. We have a small percentage of working interest, about 4.5%, and that's being operated by the De Beers Group. We also have a silica property in Saskatchewan, very high purity sand. It may actually be appropriate and possible to turn the silica sand into metal silicon. And that's potentially a very high use coming up in the battery industry, because basically you add it to a lithium battery and you can increase the time between chargings by maybe 6 times. So pretty exciting work being done in that avenue. We're just doing the testing right now to see if this is something that could be of value to the company. We also have a royalty interest in the Greenwood district. We have approximately the northern half Both of the north and south half are being explored by a junior called Golden Dawn. The property that we have actually had significant production at the Phoenix mine, as well as some small productions elsewhere, about 500,000 pounds of copper and over 1 million ounces of gold. So pretty exciting district. Hopefully we get some royalty payments on that sooner than later. The Silver Queen, which is our focus right now, is in the Skeena Arch area. A number of porphyry copper deposits around there, some precious metals as well. We looked at it and thought, well, this looks like an intermediate sulfidation system. In fact, there is a porphyry that was discovered at depth. That's our sort of a secondary target, but the vein system is quite extensive, and that's really why we're interested in the project initially. So high grades to start with. That's a great place to begin the evaluation. The infrastructure was also a concern. Like I had mentioned, Rob and I had been involved in the Golden Triangle at the Homestake Ridge deposit. Everything's done with a helicopter, remote camp. You can drive almost everywhere here. So the logistics are spectacular. There was a small amount of historic production. A lot of underground development, though, in the anticipation of mining when silver prices were spiking very high. That's left us with about 9 kilometers of underground workings. They're all flooded at this point, but those could be dewatered and give access when we get to the stage of sort of the more like the feasibility stage of exploration. There was some metallurgy, 1988. Obviously, would have to be upgraded, but it showed that there was some pretty good recovery, and in particular some of the advances. So we expect that to improve. So right now we're up to 76 holes. I don't know the exact meterage at this point, but a lot of progress. So as far as the location, here's the town of Houston, paved road going partway to the west and south, and then through the Silver Queen project and continuing on to the Huckleberry mine. Power line follows the same, no shortage of water in the region, and we're surrounded by majors, which is a significant advantage for a junior company. You can see from the photograph on the upper left here, this is the entrance to the mine, the camp zone here, the camp area. So you can see that it's a good gravel road to the site. You can see the rolling topography in the other two slides. A lot of this land is covered by soil and grassland. It's sort of rolling ranch land, easy to get around. And also, even though there are 20 veins that have been discovered on the property already, you can see there's a lot of coverage and a lot of opportunity for buried and unexposed veins on the project. So we're pretty excited about the exploration potential. Just a quick note about the resource. You can see the grades we talked about. Whether you look at it, it's polymetallic. So if you look at it either as gold equivalent or silver equivalent, it's pretty impressive. And really, most of this resource is on the number 3 vein, which is one of 20 veins that have been identified in this 6 square kilometer area. So pretty exciting, both for what we have already and what we can add to this. So taking a look at where those resources are, primarily you can see all the small drill holes here with the small black dots. The larger blue dots there are drill holes. So we did do some confirmation drilling on the number 3 vein, which is that central area trending to the northwest. And very quickly focused farther to the west on the camp vein. Now this is more silver biased, and we've had some spectacular results. We've drilled something like 38 holes in this area now, and we're anticipating that we'll be able to do a maiden resource on this in probably near the end of the second quarter of 2022. We noticed that the orientation, rather than being northwesterly like the number 3 vein, is probably more like these east-west veins. And in fact, probably the camp vein extends into the Svensson extension, and our recent drilling there, which is pretty wide-spaced, has indicated that we're correct in that area. A little bit farther to the east, the NG3 is also east-west, and we've continued to just finish drilling there very recently. And if you continue a little bit farther to the east from that, you see the little dashed area there for the Itzit copper moly porphyries, which is buried and only has 6 holes in it. So that's a pretty small apophyse of probably what's a larger porphyry system underlying the vein mineralization. So pretty exciting exploration potential here. A little bit of a closer look at the camp vein. Initially, it was thought to be northwest trending, like the number 3. But when we did the detailed drilling, we did a couple of things. First of all, we intersected, and this is our hole number 10 here in this little inset, the 2020 drilling, that shows some of the bonanza grade silver. Most of that reddish material there in that white colored area, that's all ruby silver. And that assay, that interval assay, 56,000 grams per ton silver. So by following these high grade intercepts, and you see there's quite a number of them that we've obtained so far, we started noticing that the mineralization is actually lining up a lot better in an east-west orientation, and we've continued to extend that into the Svensson zone farther to the east. Take a look. I'll step out a little bit. You can see some of the intercepts that we've received from the camp vein, some spectacular silver numbers. You can see the gold numbers are generally not as high there. There's a 9-grammer there somewhere, hole 48. But as you go east, there's a lot more of those higher grade gold values. And in fact, the silver values decrease a little bit. So whether you like to look at it in gold ounce gold equivalent or silver equivalent, they're still pretty spectacular numbers. So we take a look kind of back out just a bit more on the west side. We see there on the left side of the slide, you can see the camp veins that I showed you there in red. And then on the right-hand side of that slide, you can see the number 3 vein. And really that dark reddish area is the highest grade with the most thickness of mineralization, and it just happens to intersect where these east-west veins come in. So I suspect that there's an important control on the mineralization both northwest and east-west, and where those intersections occur, that seems to be where we get some of our best values. So in summary, we started out with a high-grade resource that we inherited from the previous management. We've expanded that with our drilling, and we think we've advanced the understanding of these veins, which gives us a much higher probability of adding additional ounces. And I think we're on our way towards that target of plus 1 million ounces of gold equivalent. So the property, or the company, also has the other assets, a couple of diamond projects. Diamonds are really have recovered strongly since the pandemic, and Russia produces right now about 1/3 of the world's diamond production. So these properties, I think, are becoming a lot more valuable. We're well funded. We're going to have over $1.5 million, to continue on the work and get ready for the next phase of work, which we'll outline once we receive all the drill data that we're waiting for right now. And our team has explored and discovered a number of deposits, and we've had successful spin out to the shareholders of either purchase or other ways of adding value to the shareholders. So when you compare where we are right now, we're still this is just based on the resources that we have from the previous group. We haven't done an upgrade by adding in the camp vein. We're hoping to move our way on this chart farther to the left and get a lot higher value per ounce of silver, as we come up with our our resource update sometime towards the end of the second quarter. So I'm going to open it up for questions at that point. And Tim?
All right, great. Well, thank you very much, Joe, for the informative presentation. We'll now move to the Q&A session. We do have a few questions here. First, it seems that the gold-silver ratio, and as well as the base metals, are quite different among different zones on the project. What can you elaborate on that, and what does that tell us about the mineralized system?
Well, that's one of the criteria, I think, to define it as an intermediate sulfidation system. These things are related to intrusive rocks, and when they exsolve their fluids and that migrates away from that heat source, the chemistry changes, right? So the hottest elements have a lot of salty metals in solution, and as they cool and they interact with some of the wall rock, they'll change in chemistry. So typically you'll get a zonation from things like molybdenum and tungsten to copper to lead, zinc, silver to gold to things like barium and other cooler elements. So depending on what vein was open at what time in that progression, you're going to get if it's just a simple process, you get a nice zoning. But typically these things pulse. You'll get more aggressive pulsation and explosion, and then it kind of quiets down for a while, builds pressure, and does it again. So you do get overlapping type systems, and that's why some, well, like the west side of the Svensson zone, there's both very high grade silver and very high grade gold. It's probably the transition between one of those pulses.
Great. And looking at other projects that you have, what are the plans for the diamond and other projects? Would you look to potentially sell those to fund work at Silver Queen?
That's that's certainly a possibility. We haven't aggressively looked to do that. I mean, when we took over, diamond prices, especially during the pandemic, were terrible, and the last thing you want to do is sell something that's depressed, especially since it's, it does have quite a bit of potential. There's 8 kimberlites on the Monument Valley project, and they're all diamond bearing. So they're fairly small diamonds that have been discovered so far. But, we did a magnetic survey this past winter, the winter before last. And, we discovered 2 more, I think it was 2 or 3 targets. Rob, maybe jump in on that. But, these are some targets that haven't even been tested yet.
Great. And you also have a royalty on another project in British Columbia. Do you have any guidance on plans at that project and when that might start producing revenues?
Yeah, well, they have a working mill that's between the 2 property positions, so sort of the south end of our property. It had been in production, like I said, the Phoenix mine had been in production and produced quite a bit of copper and gold. There are a number of other showings that have produced smaller amounts of material, pretty good grades. So the company, we monitored Golden Dawn, but we don't have any direct sort of working interest with them. So it's just a royalty interest, and they're raising money on a number of their drill targets, and just kind of keep track of where they are along the process. Right now, it doesn't pay to sell a royalty on a property that's this stage, especially when it's so close to being the next stage, when they have a resource. So it's another property we think is going to have some significant value for the company, but we don't want to sell too early.
Sure. Great. And kind of returning to Silver Queen, obviously there was some past production there. And obviously at this point, you're more oriented toward drilling and exploration. But what are your thoughts on development? Would the past work there and the infrastructure help facilitate future development?
Well, certainly dewatering the underground will be helpful for bulk sampling. It's been pretty well drilled from the locations that those underground workings would allow us. But it allows you to push into new areas as well. That's a little bit farther out. I mean, a lot of our targets are amazingly shallow, so we get a lot of bang for the buck by drilling. I mean, this is one of the reasons that we originally transferred our interest from trying to add ounces in the number 3, where we're looking deeper and deeper, and as opposed to the camp vein, where these are mineralized zones that are coming to the surface, some of which we don't really crop out at the surface. So you get a lot of intercepts per foot, right, or meter of drilling.
Great. And would you envision this? Obviously, it is more veins. Would this be envisioned as an underground mining project, or some of this comes basically to surface? Would there be open pit potential here?
There certainly could be. I think we'll have to see what it all, what all the assays come back and put it together. But it's an engineering question. I mean, it's always the question of, a big open pit. There's resistance to mining that you have to consider. There's, potentially, more tailings, more mine waste, as opposed to mining a narrow area, which would be a higher cost initially, but then some of those other costs are much lower. So, we're focusing on finding the high grade because that's usually where all the profit is, right? And then we'll let the engineers find out the cheapest way to extract that.
Great. And then you had mentioned the porphyry potential here. Is that something that you would plan to do some drilling on this year?
Probably not this year, and in part because the apophyse that was already drilled looks too small to have generated this much metal that we see in the veins. So where's the main body? Well, we don't know. We've flown it. Magnetics is often helpful, but there are a lot of magnetic volcanic rocks that sit on top. So, there's not an easy target at this point. But as we drill the veins out and start understanding the zoning, I think that will give us a lot better chance to do some deep drilling and be successful on which locations we pick.
Great. And I guess one final question, just to kind of a little open-ended, but what can we look forward to from the company over the coming months? What are potential catalysts?
Well, we have quite a few assays that are either in the lab or on the core logging shed, waiting to be logged and sampled. So that's going to come, provide us with information for quite a while now. We will be, once we finish all of the work on the camp vein, then we'll be doing our resource update. And again, that's probably takes us through to the end of the second quarter. There's some field work that we need to do because there are some other targets that are pretty shallow that have had either little drilling, which is kind of encouraging. There's been some target areas, some veins that have had some pretty good intercepts, but they never were followed up. In particular, as we start understanding maybe some of these structural intersections and how important they are. So there's some surface work, and one of the areas to the northwest of the camp vein, it's called the bunkhouse, and there's I think 2 drill holes. One of them looks like it's set up on the vein and drilled away from it, and then the other one goes in a different direction. So a little bit of surface work there to kind of figure out what the best shot is on that. So we like to do things in kind of sequence. So, the more speculative things, we'd like to add a few of those more speculative targets in a drilling program, because if you hit on one, then you can go back, get the, the appropriate amount of permitting to do a much more aggressive program.
Great. All right. Well, I'd like to again thank you, Joe and Rob, and to everyone out there for joining us today. Up next, we have Silver Viper on Stream 1 and Klondike Gold on Stream 2.